Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for wonderful introduction. I am very happy to be part of this conclave, and I feel this is a very right time this initiative was taken. And before anybody else do, I think let us do. That is the thing we have to do, because this race is going on both place, academia, industry, and whosoever participate first would have a bigger experience. And I think this is a very good initiative by IHRD, training their faculties and students for knowing what is generative AI and how it can be utilized. And I will try to share some of my views and what we are doing and how it is being useful in engineering education and engineering research. I come from institute named Indian Institute of Space Science and Technology. So this is our campus. And we have 3 departments which is offering engineering degree, let's say avionics, aerospace, and engineering physics department. We offer BTech in different degrees. And then we have 15 MTech program in different disciplines. We have 1 machine learning and computing MTech as well. This is very near to this place. It's Valiamala in Thiruvananthapuram itself. So we are looking into generative AI, and there's always thrust to know how our brain works, and then people trying to duplicate thing which is similar to our brain. Neural network is one such aspect you can think of, where people are saying that, okay, I'm trying to develop machine which can think like or act like humans. That is, I think, mostly the analogy people derive. And then there are a lot of collaboration among multiple disciplines, let's say psychologists and computer scientists, neuroscientists. They come together, they share, exchange ideas, and then they come up with a mathematical model or a computer program, and then basically we try to delve into some reasoning and AI and other things. So there are different names people give to this technology in different time frame, but essentially it's kind of a mapping function. So basically you have a X and then you want to map into Y. And then this is the very interesting picture where we are talking about left and right brain. So we know that our left brain is more responsible for creativity, intuition, arts, creation, feeling, and imagination. On the other hand, right brain do for analysis, logic, idea, facts, math, and training. So basically the traditional AI actually used to consider only the right part of the brain, mostly the analysis part, logic part, or math part of it. The generative AI essentially migrated to left idea where we're talking about creativity, intuitions, and other things. So this is where generative AI is actually bringing more creativity, although a lot of complaints are also there against generative AI, but nevertheless this is trying to mimic our imaginations also. So how does generative AI actually work? So in general, our humans basically, how do we learn anything? So we have a life experience, and that actually allow us to do some creativity, imagination, and then we also understand these kind of a requirement, and then come up with the new ideas, which is influenced from our experience. So whatever we do for first time, if it doesn't lead to a good result, we go back and retry this thing, and then a lot of iterations are happening before we reach to a desired outcome from ourselves. So that is kind of the creative idea humans are basically using. On the other hand, this generative AI also trying to model same kind of a concept. We have something called, I will talk about a little bit more technical what generative AI actually means. We have some kind of a mathematical distribution from the data set. We are trying to learn those distribution. Let's say we want to generate human faces. So we are trying to learn how a human face distribution would look like. okay? And then we sample that distribution and then basically create unique samples from that distribution. So basically we are doing kind of a learned parameterized mathematical distribution from the data set, and that is we give to the generative AI, and then being used in various aspects. Let's say we do prompt engineering, we give a questions, or we kind of raise some query, or we ask some question answer kind of a thing. And then we try to use this learned distribution to generate new kind of a ideas from there. So generative AI essentially sample this distribution based on the input you give, and then you get different answers every time. If you ask same question, it might give a different response because it is sampling the distribution and then trying to approximate this query would lead to where in that particular distribution. That is kind of a problem generative AI actually is solving. So how this generative AI can be used for research and education. First of all, it can be used in analyzing a large data set and identifying the pattern. So essentially, most of the time, people are recruited to look for patterns or anomalies in the patterns, or there is a kind of a boring job people don't want to do, that every time I see this sequence and look for some kind of anomaly. So identifying pattern is the task, then I think this AI can definitely help us in very good way, and then we can locate one particular pattern from all the different patterns. So that is kind of a one such analysis people do. So analyzing the large data set, identifying the patterns. And then it can also be useful in generating new research direction. What are the new research direction? Let's say nowadays I see most of the students, they don't come to the faculty to discuss the research idea directly. First they ask ChatGPT what are the open problems in particular research area, and then they ask which are the papers have been published in this area, what are the data set available, any open source code is available. And once they get all these ideas, and then they collect those things and then come to the faculty with a little more prepared way. So essentially they kind of minimize the interaction time with the faculty and then look for the possible, because it is very difficult for a human being to read hundreds of paper in a 1 month time or 2 months time. So they actually use AI to basically narrow down their summaries. Okay, that is one such people are using in researcher, and we see a lot of students are taking benefit of this in different things. Again, then simple explanatory graphics for scientific setup. Suppose many times I have to prepare slides for some presentation and I have no idea how to do this thing. I may not having skills for making some slides. I can use generative AI and give what I want to do and then let it draw something for me, and then I reuse that thing to present to the people. That is another way people are using educational and research. So to make you tell what you want to tell to the student, and then let AI generate a very good looking or maybe much more attractive presentation for students. Then people are also using in visual teaching assistants. Let's say Khan Academy has come up with a very nice AI app in their portal. You go to Khan Academy, all of us know that they are supporting a lot of lectures in their different topics of the mathematics, physics and chemistry. So what they do basically, they also added a AI, which is kind of a layer of AI they have introduced, and where student can, so they don't answer the question directly, but then help student to understand the concept. Let's say, suppose I am multiplying sequence of number, so they will tell, okay, what is the distributive property, and then let student ask this question. I don't know the answer, then they will help look for distributive properties. It's kind of more of a collaborative learning, which is very difficult for a faculty, which, let's say, mostly in India, we have a very poor faculty to student ratio. Maybe we have one faculty for 100 students, something like that is there in India. So, and a single faculty cannot give individual attention to many of the students. So there actually this generative AI can actually be co-teacher, where the simple concept which has been discussed in class can be understood by the student by interacting with this module, where they will be only teaching, not only teaching the concept, but also the properties, and then solving the problems in a step-by-step manner. So directly giving answer, like I listen to that, if I directly give an answer, it is not a good thing which I don't want because I don't learn the process of getting that answer. So enabling generative AI to basically go in a step by ways where, let's say, so topics like mathematics, which is most of the students afraid of mathematics because they are afraid to ask their teachers how this particular answer has been obtained, and many times the answer may be not satisfactory or may not be complete. So generative AI at least help us to student to interact with the client and then get the answer and then clear his doubt, and then it's kind of a collaborative learning. That is how people are trying to use generative AI. And in the same way we see that people now use even YouTube for listening to lectures and to update their knowledge in different courses. So I think interacting with AI and content would actually be useful. People also use for generating content and course material. So many times you are preparing some lecture notes. Preparing lecture notes is not that easy. Faculty need to spend a lot of time to prepare lecture notes, and then you have to read a lot of books, and content may not be available, and you are always busy in many other things in the administrative stuff and many other things which is also part of the faculty profile. So if you can use AI to create good content which is more knowledgeable, means more questions and more tutorials and more detailed description of particular topic, and can be shared with the student, although it has to be moderated, because many times we have seen that generative AI may not be giving the right concept because it's generating some words. So you have to moderate, and then it is always easy to inspect a written document rather than writing your own document. So I think that people are also using for creating content and the course material. Even I heard that people are using to even create examination papers using ChatGPT and generative AI. So once we are trusting so much that they can create good questions, I think the property that conditioning on something is one important property we are using in ChatGPT. People are also using in quiz and exam paper setting. Now I will show you one. There is a very good app where you paste some kind of a text and then you ask it to prepare questions, and that actually it will read the text and then generate question which will check whether how much you have understood particular paragraph or particular piece of document or not. So that's how people are using for education and research. So how this actually all started? So this ChatGPT actually started with this Instruct GPT. So what was their basic idea? Is kind of you give certain input and then it generates certain output. So you give input request, and against the request it will generate some kind of a response. So essentially you see a prompt and then you type something in prompt, and then it basically generates something based on the prompt that you give. So what essentially they are doing, they are kind of working on this three principle. So this large language model are trained using first generative pre-training. I will talk about what is generative pre-training, then supervised fine-tuning training, and then reinforcement learning from human feedback. These are the three principles based on which all these LLMs are being trained, and then the addition of reinforcement learning is also advantageous, and same way it is disadvantageous as well. There's a lot of debate happening in this research community whether RL is biasing the the generation part of it, but there are a lot of people are started using reinforcement learning for generating feedback, which is or kind of the output which is more societal friendly. So kind of like people are asking, they will not give any answer if you ask about political view or how to make a bomb or anything. They will not give, because there's an RL agent which is actually forcing the model to do not produce things which is not good for society. So I think we are again putting this reinforcement learning agent to control those generation. So what essentially we are doing in ChatGPT, we are actually trying to learn a language model, and language model is very simple probabilistic model. So if you see that we have a set of historical inputs. So let's say x1, x2, x3 are the xt are the temporal inputs we have, and then knowing t numbers of previous document, I'm predicting the next in future. So what is the next word I will predict if I know previous word. So essentially I'm producing every word at a time. That is what essentially the generative models are doing. And then theta are the parameters. Parameters means, suppose I am training a neural network model or a autoencoder or variational autoencoder or generative adversarial neural. So the parameters of this model are being called to be theta. So the process of training is what we so there are something in NLP, there are something called, unigram, bigram, trigram, n-gram models are there, which is used to generate words. So the idea is here to give a sequence of input and then generating certain output. That is what language model essentially is doing. So like here, there is example, Alice painted her house dash. Okay, so now there are several such hypotheses would be generated by the model, and then which is the most likely or most likely words would come in the model would be kept there. So there is no such like when we reason or when we produce some sentence completion, let's say we solve multiple logical and aptitude problems. So we just see the sequence, and then whichever is the most probable or most plausible sequence we think, we just put that in answer. It's not that all the time we get correct, but many times we do mistakes also. That's how many people could not crack many of the exams, and then some people could crack exams. So I think, so here also we are training a model to generate the more plausible output, and then they are generating based on some probability. These are probabilities are being generated, and whichever has the highest possible probabilities is being spits out at the output, and then it becomes the history for the next generation. So it can keep on generating. You can decide how much is the tokens you want to generate, and that's how the language model generate. But this is not actually we want to more meaningful output. So that's where people, use kind of a generative models, because the previous model, the n-gram and bigram models are essentially simple probabilistic model, and then based on the number of training and the number of vocabulary or number of dictionary, it can generate certain output. So what this has been changed, now this language models are not enough, so we need generative models. And generative models, so typically people talk about vision transformer, or the transformers, or there are many such models generated by Facebook or Google, which is again kind of an embedding generation. Embedding means you give certain lot of input data, let's say sentence, and then their completion, and then they would able to generate certain tokens as the output. So it's kind of again a probabilistic vector which is being spitted out by the model. So basically, recently we have seen that transformer are another kind of a deep learning model which is very popular and which can embed a lot of information in a very small number of weights, and that's how they become very popular than other feed-forward type of neural network. And then they actually become the foundational model for GPT, and then now they can train to do a specific task or subject matter. Suppose I want to train for medical usage, I can train the same model for medical usage. I can train for the my industrial application. So a lot of people have used these models and trained tailor-made for their applications. Okay, so because these are the architecture, this is called something in machine learning or deep learning called transfer learning. Transfer learning means I am transferring my knowledge into the weights by training some of the layers, not all the layers, because training all the layers is very expensive. So we train few layers and then embed our knowledge into some finite amount of layers. So this GPT is very popular. GPT, if you see this particular table, it will tell you that how big is the model. So the GPT-4, they have not disclosed how many number of parameters are there, but it is expected that it will be more than 175 billion parameter. And then it requires huge amount of data. Let's say if you see this first GPT-1 having 117 million parameter, they had been trained on book corpus, 4.5 GB of text from 7,000 unpublished book on various genres. And then it took around 1 month on 8 GPUs. So this kind of infrastructure is, suppose we want to work on generative AI for our application. First of all, we have to think about what infrastructure we have, whether we can build this infrastructure, and then only we can talk about creating new set of models which is for our application. Otherwise, we will be using the subscription charges to different companies like OpenAI. Now they subscribe, you can hire OpenAI or ChatGPT for $20 per month, and that's how basically they make money, and then you would be able to solve very problem which is constrained to their training. So if you want to develop something on our own end, we have to really think about how to build this infrastructure for people, and then maybe with a little subscription fee, and then they can train their model and then generate the output which is for our own application, let's say for Indian problem per se. I will not go into these details of this thing, but this is from Wikipedia. You can also look into that. So what essentially the problem with generative models? So the basically generative model, I told you that they are working on the probabilistic reasoning. So we are maximizing the probability of generating particular word at knowing some historical thing. So then what essentially people do, how they train GPT. So to train GPT, there's something like do something called imitation learning. Imitation learning means I will give thousands of questions to a human, and then same thousand of questions I will give to ChatGPT as well. And then each human would generate a meaningful outcome of those questions. I will compare the outcome of ChatGPT with the human generated output, and then I will try to inherit the human level of capacity onto the ChatGPT. And once this error between human generation and the model driven generation is minimized, then we can say that GPT is trained. So that's what we see, that the GPT is mostly trying to write things which is mostly either from a literature perspective. They like very good English because they are taken from the corpus which is having very good textual English. But not all people write like that. A lot of mistakes we make. But since it has been trained from a set of people, it has inherited their characteristic in the weights, and that is what basically we use in the imitation learning. And then we have a second topic which is kind of a fine-tuning in training using the inputs from the expert response. So many times what happens, you give a lot of data, but then what happens, there are certain mistakes still we're making. So to correct those things, we take again some experts' advice. Experts mean the humans, and they have been given money to create content for the training such models. And then we try to clone their behavior into the models. That's called behavior cloning. But one problem can happen with this thing. Something called distribution shift can happen. Means we train, let's say, we actually want to train on a green area. So what we want, there is an expert, given a sentence, the expert generates certain outcome. And then there is a model generates certain outcome. And then we check whether how close they are. And if they are not close, then we will try to train again the model. So essentially this green circle shows the how humans domain lies in that distribution, but the model may not be good enough to confine their outputs in this region, so they have a wider output, and that basically caused the distribution shift in generation. That's how we see sometimes meaningless output is also generated by the ChatGPT, which is no longer very close to the human level of understanding and human level of generation. And that basically kind of causes some problem in the generation, and that basically can effect in the compounding of the errors, and the also inference time is also becoming very high because we have a wider search space, and then the model may not be able to generate the effective output that as we desire. So what people do, they bring something called reinforcement learning into the picture. So this reinforcement learning from human feedback. So the model is able to generate the model, the output, but this output may not be the desired output. So what we do, we try to bring this reinforcement learning agent. So we now define a problem like a reward and punishment kind of a problem. And when we have reward means you do good things, you've been rewarded, the agent would be getting more reward, and then the loss would be minimizing. Okay, but if does the mistake in generation, it will be penalized significantly so that it will not repeat the same mistake again, and then it will always try to maximize its reward. So once we have agents, so most of the time this RL is being used in the games, automatic games are there where people try to win this Atari game or this Mario or this the artificial agent is playing some kind of a computer game, and they want to maximize their coins collection or the reward so that they can do the action which is more prone to give the better result. So that kind of a idea they have thought in the ChatGPT 4, or basically the advanced version of ChatGPT, where this reinforcement learning feedback has been given, which is kind of optimize the language model with a human feedback. So this RLHF has enabled language model to begin to align a model trained on a general corpus of text data to that complex human value. So basically we bring human into loop, and then basically we train this model. So that is the basic idea. So we have a simple language model, which is first of all trained on the corpus, and then we have a RL agent. Okay, this is the reward model, and then this model also generates certain kind of a text, and then we compare both the output and try to maximize. So there are some metric people use, something called blue score, or many other scores are there to see how much the natural language generated output is close to the human generated output. So essentially it's a neural network model. So it is trained based on the supervised setup, and then it is trying to generate, which is we ask it to generate. So it's no intelligence, but essentially it is doing things which is we ask it to do. So that's kind of an idea of using this ChatGPT with reinforcement learning. So this is the final model look like. This is the initial language model. This is the RL policies, and then you try to minimize certain loss. So don't worry about this equation. This kind of we have a KL divergence, which is measuring the desired distribution, and then predicted distribution should be close to each other, and then we give this feedback and then update the parameters of the this model. This is the language model. Finally, we are trying to generate our output, and that's we use something called gradient descent and some reinforcement learning, PPO, optimization technique to minimize the loss and then maximize our reward. So this is about technical aspect about the how ChatGPT is being trained, and then we can actually use this for many other applications. Like now this ChatGPT is being used for new research direction. I already told about simpler explanatory graphics for scientific setup, virtual teaching, generating content for course material, question and exam paper settings. These are some applications. Some of the available tools in the recent time, I think many people already discussed this thing, but maybe it's a repetition. But I will talk about some of the tools. Let's say if you are interested in the music and song composition, so there are tools like Voice Mod, Boomi, AIVA, Meta AI. So these kind of a sound raw, these are the AI's engine which is available. You can give what kind of a pitch you want, what sound you want, male, female. Based on your mood, it can generate the music. Suppose you are happy, then it will generate happy music, and if you are sad, you want to generate sad music. So so humans are very good at subjective inputs. Let's say we don't really quantify things. We say good, bad, very bad. We don't give 0.5, 0.6 numbers. We don't use. But those subjective assessment has been converted into numbers, and then you can generate the music using such kind of applications. And then if you want to do creative writing, so all of you already use ChatGPT for many applications. Yesterday, Honorable Minister also read a poem generated by ChatGPT. So we know that ChatGPT, how powerful it is. Although there are some drawbacks also is there. We will discuss those things later. But we can generate academics text. We can generate some kind of answers. I think Professor Viraj might have also talked about how assessment would be done if I allow the ChatGPT to write an essay for me, and then how there is a challenge among faculty. How are we going to allow students to use ChatGPT in their studies, or we are going to ban this ChatGPT, or we allow them to use partially and then acknowledge that they have used ChatGPT, and how as a faculty we can use ChatGPT for a better assessment. Can we pinpoint the errors that ChatGPT would make, and then give question to student which allow them to think more about the subject rather than just generating an answer and getting a grade. So that kind of questions are still open. I think a lot of debates and discussions are required for faculty, whether we will permit or not, whether you permit or not, they will going to use it anyway. So we have to be prepared for how we can do assessment, better assessment. That is one such question. People also use for question framing and answering. This is another, this app, Qlinios. So you can actually upload text from the whatever paragraph. So different subject. Suppose you are talking about history or medical or technology, you can upload the text and it will generate set of question answer that you can ask student to answer and then check whether they are correct or not. Okay, that way whether they have understood the paragraph which you have pasted in the text. Again, these are all not free. You have to pay some subscription fee, but some questions you can definitely ask for free. I work in computer vision and image processing area, so we use this, a lot of these tools are there. We don't use, but we try to, sometimes we have to use for training our model. Suppose I need more images on some particular subject. Although we write our own code for generating images, but typically the idea is same. They use some, you give a textual query and then they will generate image for. Suppose I asked yesterday to generate a temple near a river, lot of mountains are nearby. It generated a very nice picture of a Buddhist temple, there is a river, then the background there is a snowy mountain. There is no such place might exist, but they kind of generate based on the questions you give. So that kind of a capability they have. They look very fancy now, may not be much useful immediately, but I think later when we clubbed with multiple such modality, it might become a very powerful tool. Like people are asking that how we can create content which is more interesting to the student. So I think for student like student like a under UKG, LKG, they need more pictorial input rather than textual kind of information. So I think we can generate some textual into a more cartoonish kind of a picture which they can learn. So I think everybody cannot draw the cartoon, so we can use this AI engine to generate our concept that we want to use and embed into our kids, and that can be used to generate such thing. These are some kind of various tools one can use. People can use for presentation making. I saw this our Professor Achyutanand talk about AI cannot generate the PPTs, but it can generate PPT, may not be as beautiful as that he has done. But you can give text and then what kind of audience you are going to address, and it can generate some kind of a presentation for you, and then you can modify that presentation and then save your time in doing better things. That is another idea. One can use this AI presentation maker. Then AI-powered building design. So a lot of people do work with the architecture, and then they want to design some good, buildings. So there are tools which can again be useful in designing very good, better buildings. So you can condition on various aspects. Any person who doesn't know architecture also can use this tool and then go with his design to architect or to civil engineer, and then say, okay, I want this, and just check the feasibility later, because finally it has to build. So the capacity and the structural strength and other thing has to be checked by the civil engineer and the architect. But essentially you can go with a design and then see what design you are interested. People are also using in automobile design. Let's say if you see this particular thing, we have a product aesthetic design. This is a machine learning augmentation. So now we are not only interested to buy a machine, but also the how the machine looks. So basically, many cars are, lot of investment people do for designing the interior of the car, how the car shape would look like, how the color we should choose. So those kind of aesthetical aspect which actually decide the commercial value of the product. Engine, maybe everybody may be using some same engine, but the aesthetic value and the material they use can actually play a big role in the deciding the selling of a particular car. And that actually can be definitely useful by generative AI. One can use these ideas to design various product concept and then materials, and then what would sell, what would not sell, and then reasoning can be done also using that. People are also using machine learning for drug formulation developments. This is one paper published recently. There they say that, okay, I have some particular drug to be designed, and then I have a disease in my mind. So then they give those inputs, and then the generative engine would give you the possible formula for creating that drug, and then it can be useful in even drug discovery as well. So these people are using for drug formulation, material engineering as well. This Cadence is a very big company for designing these chips. They actually do a lot of chip designing, and they have a software which is very expensive, people are actually using for various profiling. So they come up with a Cadence, a joint enterprise data and AI, JED AI they say, and that actually can help this you to design compact chips, and then also it can be helpful in then coming up with a you give it particular use case, and then it will come up with a design of a transistor, how the configuration would happen, power supply, and all those kind of a concept. They can help you in circuit engineering and designing for sensors, and then come up with a full 3D printed prototype that you can send to foundry, and then it will generate. You can print that thing and then use that particular chip in different applications. So because you need to have a lot of expensive engineers to know the design Cadence software, and then many times the debugging part of that would be very difficult, and there is a lot of expenditure you have to make before you really print that circuit, and that delay in the pipeline actually causes so much delay in the various aspects. So you can actually use some of the design which is possible to done by the AI, and only fine tuning can be done by the expert engineer. That can be done also using this. So Cadence also uses this particular tool. People are also using in there are some questions that whether ChatGPT can understand physics or not. So now people are working on developing embedding kind of a knowledge in these generative engine. So you explain the physical concept to them, and then so they will do both ways. So you tell the physical concept, they will come up with an experiment for you, and then if you tell the experiment, they will tell the physical phenomena that might be undergoing in that experiment. So such kind of a work is also happening where physicists are and chemists are now using generative AI for different application, and then a lot of development is happening in that area where physics informed AIs is there. People are actually solving Schrodinger wave type of equation, and then various complicated differential equations and coupled equation using AI models for solve problem which is not been solved by a conventional way, or a lot of open problem has been solved by now these AI applications. People are also using in manipulator design. Let's say I work in intelligent robotics, so we have to buy these actuators and then design our 7-DoF robotic arm. So now if I have certain tasks to do, I can actually come up with a 3D model of a arm by giving a prompt to the particular AI engine, and then it can generate a manipulator or kind of a 3D CAD model for the entire robotic arm, and then I can just print it and then use it. So that's kind of a people are using generative AI for not only for textual thing, but also for the computer vision and robotic manipulation kind of a task. So it can generate robotic manipulation. Although a lot of work is still maybe remaining to use, print it and then check with the characterize it whether it is working as for the human-like design or not. But rather there is no hurry in this thing. I think once we design one model, improve the next model will be better than the previous model. So I think these use cases are very specific to particular domain of applications. People are also using in rainfall prediction. So it's a remote sensing application. We have a project with the East Track Bangalore where they are having sounding radars, and then ground radars are basically taking the various weather kind of a data, and then they want to do a prediction of the rainfall or some kind of a weather prediction. So this particular paper talks about how this weather radar data can be useful in short-term rainfall prediction. Again, they use something called conditional generative adversarial neural network to predict the weather or rain in, let's say, 1 hour or half an hour time duration, and that kind of a application people are also using. People are also, like most of the people, like they are afraid of maths, they are also afraid of the programming. And then because of this codex or open AI codex, many people are now able to learn these things on their own, because teaching, there are finding teachers for such thing is not very easy. You have to take admission in some college, which is also a very difficult thing, and then you have to class some exam, and then the faculty would be teaching whether you know that a lot of uncertainties are there. So most of the time people are trying to become self-learner, and if you are trying to learn self things, so I think this open AI codec or Copilot thing would be definitely useful in learning programming. And then, but we should also train them how to understand which is a good program, which is a bad program, and what kind of error an AI can make. And at least we will see in future, most of the industry would be migrating to this open AI kind of a coding environment, and then we have to really do the bug fixing on the code generated by AI rather than our own bugs. So I think that the job profile of the software developer would be changing in recent time. So when see the generative AI can also be have a lot of benefits, and also some of the implications are also there. Some kind of a bad effects also can happen. So while Gen AI might be helping researcher generate useful text and other output to support their work, it is not necessarily a straightforward process. It can take multiple iteration of a prompt before the desired output is achieved. A worry is that young learners, because they are by definition less expert than teachers, might unknowingly and without critical engagement accept Gen AI output that is superficial and inaccurate or even harmful. So we have to also train them how to rationally use generated content. Don't blindly believe, because there are people in the world who are not exposed to technologies. They actually believe whatever comes in the internet is correct. That I think very wrong. We know that a lot of false information, fake news are being propagated, and now we have a image generation. We can just make any such image and then post it on a social media. So I think there are tools. Again, technology can only provide the tools. Social learning has its own role, but there's a limitation. But technology can only help us to tell whether it's a generated content or it's a real content, and then we need to target technology to only defeat the technology. Otherwise, it is not going to work. So some kind of a controversies and implication for education. So it's kind of a we are worsening the digital poverty. We are outpacing the national regulation adaptation. We are using the content without the consent. So we now chase the, so nobody asks consent to just take the content from the internet and then we use. So ChatGPT would give some content. Unexplainable models to generate output. So we don't know what it condition on or which particular textbook it has inferred to, and this output. So there's kind of a reasoning. How is called basically understanding how this output is generated, what might have lead to. So it's kind of look like a black box to us now. We ask something, we generate output. What is happening in the process is no idea. Okay, so that black box thing has to be mitigated, and then we have to bring more output in this particular aspect. And then AI generated content is also polluting the internet. So a lot of now AI generated images are there. So you don't know what is right and what is wrong. And it also causes the lack of understanding of the real world. So we live in the virtual world most of the time. And okay, and then so I will just go some of the aspects. So generative AI will be our future. So these are some examples. Okay, these are some examples how these images are being generated by the generative AI. And you see that it can cause hallucination, abusive language usage, biased data set. Huge money and computational resources are involved in this particular setup. And data set inherited limitation, how do we really talk about how to build this data set? And credibility is also one of the important issue in the generative AI. These are some comparison between Google and the ChatGPT. You can see that if you ask literature review on point cloud registration, it is giving only the paper, but it will list you the possible. So the student would be interested in more reading this thing rather than reading all this paper, so that you get a summary of this thing. And then you can also ask this question to add numbers, and then it can generate some kind of a Python generated code, and it can also explain the error. Suppose you are getting what this error means and then how to solve these errors in the programming. You can generate some kind of a text pictures like this. Okay, so these are the work which our lab we are doing. We are actually using generative AI to generate some kind of atmospheric turbulence because we don't have data for that. So we are generating using mathematical equations and the GANs to create some data set for our training. And also we are generating RGB IR pair for person re-identification training. I'm not going to details of this thing. So I hope these references would be useful to you. And if any questions are there, I will be very happy to answer. But thank you very much for your attention.
Sir, what about the bug fixing by utilizing ChatGPT, and what is the credibility crisis regarding its credibility?
So bug fixing definitely can be done. So suppose you are getting some bug in some program, you can ask this search. We search in Google and then we look for some kind of a repository where some people have described those bugs, and then we read them and try to fix our bug in the software development. But now you can ask this question, okay, what this bug is in the ChatGPT. It might have a database where all these bugs has been listed, and then it will tell you the possible answer that you can use, and then you try it. If it works, you are lucky, but there is no credibility of it. So they don't, so like we discussed about, we don't label any confidence right now. So whatever we generate with a full confidence. So I think the ChatGPT is overconfidence. So it has to also list out the probability. So if you really work on the development of the ChatGPT, you will see that the generated output has certain probability. So how certain we are with a certain numbers, I think if you can plug in that also into ChatGPT, we might be able to take a rational view whether how confident even AI engine is about my question, and then I can trust or I can believe his output and then use it for my usage. Right now we completely believe because there is no such confidence score we show, but if I have another table where I just show, okay, how much confidence about each word I am, and then overall sentence, and that those confidence actually would help us to understand how credible this particular output. So right now we cannot question, we have to use our wisdom to understand whether it's right or wrong. So black box again, so when I ask, let's say suppose some generation, let's say I have something in mind which I want to generate, but there is no mind reading ChatGPT can do. Unless basically they have certain aspect that they can read our mind, because each individual have a different questions. I want to generate something which I have in mind, but other person has something else in mind. So that whenever we facial expression and then some kind of a feedback from the humans can be also, let's say we have a camera which also see our expression, and then based on that it generates the output. So I think the next would be the personalization of AI, generated AI, means for an individual you will have a ChatGPT for you, and ChatGPT for a particular person would be completely different, and based on your usage of your work, you will be generating certain output. So this personalization of generative AI would be a future I see in long run.
So that will be the end of the question answer session.